On the day of our honeymoon departure, he handed me divorce papers before me.
I'm taking my whole family with me. If you don't like it, we'll get divorced.
Fine, but I'm still single, you know?
Fine?
I screamed in my mind as he stood there dumbfounded. Take that. My name is Emma, 35 years old, and I work at a real estate company. I enjoy my work and find it fulfilling, and I have been fortunate to have supportive seniors and juniors. On the other hand, my personal life lacks any particular hobbies, and I have never had a boyfriend. I secretly felt anxious. My friends were getting married one after another, reaching their peak at 30. There are only a few of us who are still single. My juniors also left the company one after another, and each time it felt like a stab in the chest. That's when I met Brian through a friend's introduction. He was 2 years younger and had a smile that tickled my maternal instincts. He spoke few words and always listened to my opinion when making decisions. He always prioritized my thoughts. Never having any experience with men before, I quickly fell for Brian's personality. Our relationship developed smoothly. When I mentioned marriage, he responded, "Then let's get married." When it comes to marriage, a dozen of decisions must be made. Wedding ceremony, honeymoon, and a new home to live in together. It's a once-in-a-lifetime major event, so I wanted to make decisions together. But no matter what we decided, he would always listen to my opinion. He wouldn't express his own opinion, just agreeing with me. Brian's personality felt a bit unreliable, and I started to feel dissatisfied with him. There is another thing that troubles me. It's my relationship with my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law's personality was completely different from Brian's easygoing nature. She doesn't listen to my opinions and immediately imposes her own ideas.
Emma, when you get married, of course you'll quit your job and focus on taking care of the house, right? At your age, if you don't hurry, you won't be able to have children. Brian is working hard, so as a woman you should focus on the family. It's the wife's duty to support her husband.
When I went to greet her, these were the first words she directed at me.
The husband works outside, and the wife takes care of the home.
She still holds on to such old-fashioned ideas. The truth is, I earn more money than Brian. He doesn't seem to think much about it, and has even told his parents about it. But his mother doesn't seem to like it.
But a woman who earns more than a man doesn't have any charm. Maybe you can't do any household chores? A woman who earns more than a man does not have any charm. Maybe you can't do any household chores, can you? A wife should be able to cook, do laundry, clean, and take care of her husband's health. Can you do that?
My mother-in-law said, looking down on me. If it were Brian saying that, it would be one thing. But isn't it different when it's my mother-in-law? It's not something to brag about, but I can manage all household chores since I've been living alone for a long time. And I have no intention of quitting my job after marriage, and I want to prioritize myself as much as Brian. That's what I thought. But Brian didn't help me even when my mother-in-law criticized me. Instead of refuting my mother-in-law, he nodded along with her statements. Because of that, I felt a bit uneasy about Brian. Can I really rely on someone like this for the rest of my life? Well, Brian is younger than me after all. Maybe he'll become more reliable in the future. If this marriage falls through, I might never get married in my life. Anxiety and desires clash in my mind, swirling around in endless conflict. However, time doesn't wait even if I'm troubled. There are so many things I need to decide for the wedding, the destination for the honeymoon, applying for time off from work, and so on. The to-do list keeps piling up. With a sense of unease, I spent busy days preparing for both work and marriage. One day I consulted Brian.
I think considering our work, we can only take a long vacation at this time, so is it okay to have the honeymoon during this period?
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Both Brian and I have similar quiet periods at work. If we want to take a long vacation, this is the only timing we have. The problem is the wedding. The venue I've always dreamed of is so popular that it's booked for over a year in advance.
In that case, what about going on the honeymoon before the wedding? I looked it up, and it seems some people do that. If we have the wedding first, it will be another 2 years before we can go on the trip.
If you are okay with that, Emma, then I'm fine with it too.
I thought Brian wouldn't object, but to agree so readily. At this rate, it seems like all my opinions will be accepted for the honeymoon destination, the menu for the wedding, and the decoration of the venue. I do have a desire for Brian to express his own opinions a little, but it's better than being opposed. So, whenever I found a moment, I continued to progress with the preparations for the honeymoon and the wedding. In the end, we decided to go to Europe for the honeymoon. I debated until the last minute between Hawaii and Europe, but Hawaii is close by, and I'm sure there will be another opportunity to go there. So I chose to take a trip around Italy and experiencing the picturesque streets and delicious cuisine. I also wanted to explore stylish accessories and maybe buy some commemorative tableware since it's the start of a new life. After considering various schedules and destinations, I completed the application about a month before the tour. By that time, I was completely excited. After all, it's my first overseas trip. It's impossible not to feel thrilled. My mind became filled with everything related to Europe, from buying the necessary items for the trip to planning our activities at the destination. Because of that, any dissatisfaction I had with Brian had completely disappeared.
I want to go to the Champs-Élysées when we're in Paris. Mom really wants to go there.
What, my mother-in-law? Wait a minute, what do you mean?
I couldn't catch up with the sudden situation. But Brian replied as if it were obvious.
Huh? Since everyone is going, we'll all be together even during the trip, right?
What do you mean by everyone? It's a honeymoon, so it's obvious that it's just me and you, the two of us going.
But my mom thinks it's normal for the whole family to go.
First of all, I only made reservations for 2 people, Brian and me. The tour deadline was 7 days ago, so today is the last day to register. Regardless of whether we go together or not, I only booked for 2 people, so there's no way we can go.
If you ask the travel agency, they can figure something out.
As I was dumbfounded by his statement, the intercom in the house rang. On the intercom screen, I saw the figure of my in-laws. Without caring about my surprise, my in-laws entered the house carrying a large number of bags. Ignoring my objections, my mother-in-law's eyes sparkled as she announced, "I thought I'd leave the luggage here, since we are leaving soon." I'm so excited. Then Brian said, "Just leave the luggage here," and started leading my in-laws into the room without my consent.
Wait a minute.
I tried to stop him in a hurry, but my mother-in-law stared at me sharply.
Oh, what is it, Emma? I hope you're not suddenly saying, I don't want to go together now.
I didn't agree to go together in the first place.
I immediately retorted, but my mother-in-law paid no attention, saying, "You heard it, didn't you?" I immediately retorted, but my mother-in-law paid no attention, saying, "You heard it just now, didn't you? Didn't you?"
But Brian always thought we would go together with you, right?
In response to my mother-in-law's flattering question, Brian replied with a simple, "Yeah." Taking advantage of his affirmation, my mother-in-law began to deny me.
It's normal for the husband's parents to go on the honeymoon. Don't you have such common sense? I hope we won't have any unpleasant experiences during the trip being with you. Since it's a special honeymoon, we want to make good memories, right? I'll make sure to drill common sense into you during this week before we go on the trip.
It's supposed to be a special honeymoon? Drilling common sense into me? It felt like everything was being ruined. I clearly felt my blood boiling.
Mother-in-law, this is a honeymoon, you know. Normally, it's supposed to be just the husband and wife going, right?
I desperately held my ground. If I continued to listen to my mother-in-law's side, it would affect the future. I wanted to avoid that at all costs. However, my mother-in-law stubbornly refused to compromise. Not only that, she started to deny me.
The husband's parents are supposed to go on honeymoon together. It's just common sense. I can't believe you dislike being with us. I thought we would become a family, but our common sense is different. You don't like me, and nothing seems to match. How sad.
As if she had been hurt herself, my mother-in-law lowered her eyebrows in an artificial manner. The end of her words, "how sad," contained an underlying smirk. I was convinced that she was deliberately trying to trap me. That's how certain I was. Even Brian, without questioning, began to blame me based on my mother-in-law's words.
Emma, what the hell? They're my parents. It's okay to go on a honeymoon together, isn't it?
It's impossible. We've already made reservations for 2 people. Besides, I've never heard of families accompanying a honeymoon trip, I declared, and Brian shouted angrily as if picking a fight.
I never thought you hated my parents so much, Emma. That's it? Just leave for today.
He looked at me as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. As Brian spoke, a wicked smile formed on my mother-in-law's face. Why does he always take his mother's side without listening to his spouse's opinion? Especially at a time like this, I wanted him to support my views. Before I could even react to his words, I found myself pushed out to the entrance. Just before the door closed, I caught a glimpse of my mother-in-law's smug expression. I was left outside, unable to do anything but stand there. Why am I being treated like the bad guy? Why does everything have to be ruined, including this precious trip? Frustration and sadness overwhelmed me, and tears began to flow. A few hours later, I received a message from Brian.
I want you to see if it's still possible for them to join the tour. If not, we'll cancel this trip and apply for a tour where all 4 of us can go. Please think rationally. If you reconsider, we can figure it out properly.
I don't think I'm in the wrong, so I have no reason to apologize or respond. Brian must be angry too, because there was no contact after that message. Time passed, and the day of our honeymoon departure finally arrived. I couldn't imagine enjoying it in this state, but we had been preparing for this honeymoon for a month. I couldn't refuse. As I prepared to leave the house with a heavy heart, the intercom rang. Brian had come to pick me up. We hadn't seen each other since that incident, so I didn't know what kind of face to put on. The fact that he came to pick me up meant that he still intended to go on the trip. But he didn't have a single suitcase with him. Instead, he handed me a divorce paper.
After hurting my parents, you still intended to go on this trip, didn't you? I'm taking my entire family on this honeymoon. If you don't like it, let's get a divorce. My mom said it would be better that way.
Saying that, he thrust the divorce paper in front of me. In that moment, I finally realized what kind of person he was. I thought he would listen to my opinions and prioritize me, that he was kind, but that wasn't the case. This man is just someone without his own opinions, and he prioritizes his family over me. That's Brian. As I came to that realization, I felt my feelings for him cooling down. Even if I were to marry him, I couldn't see myself overcoming the many challenges that awaited us in the future. And becoming a family with that mother-in-law, it was an impossible scenario. Determined, I pointed at the divorce paper in front of me and said, "Sure, but I'm still single, you know?"
Fair?
Brian exclaimed, clearly surprised by my words.
Single? What do you mean?
Were you listening? We talked about going on the honeymoon, but delaying the registration until the day of the ceremony. I made sure to get Brian's permission, you know? You didn't forget, did you? The marriage certificate is still in the drawer, and you even said, "If you are fine with it, Emma, then I'm fine too." That's right, divorce or not, we're not even married yet. There's no problem with going on the honeymoon with my maiden name. Perhaps he remembered my words as Brian's expression suddenly changed. But immediately, he turned red and raised his voice in frustration.
Are you out of your mind to give up on marriage just because of a honeymoon? Get a grip.
I responded, matching Brian's intensity with my own strong voice.
This is the result of me being rational. I've been so desperate to get married that I couldn't see reality clearly. I don't think I can be happy marrying someone who doesn't listen to the opinions of their future spouse and doesn't support them. I'd rather stay single for life. Thanks for making me think that way.
Haste makes waste. I keenly felt that this saying was true.
Emma, let's calm down and start over from scratch, okay?
He looked like he was about to cry. His pleading voice trembled. But I won't be fooled anymore. I will break free from this guy. Without realizing it, I found myself shouting loudly at Brian.
If you're so desperate for a family trip, why don't you go with your family of 3? But in return, you'll have to plan everything from the tour reservations to the itinerary all by yourself. After always relying on others, it's about time you experience the difficulty yourself. If you think you can handle it, go ahead, you indecisive man.
I pulled out the marriage certificate from the drawer and tore it to shreds in front of Brian. In response to the sudden turn of events, his mouth was left hanging open. Overwhelmed by my determination, Brian was completely taken aback.
Well, do you understand how serious I am now? I refuse to have a future that's pitch black. It's over between you and me. Why don't you hurry back to your beloved mommy and cry to her? You mama's boy?
Leaving a dumbfounded Brian behind, I slammed the front door shut. Given his state, he might actually go cry to his mother. I could easily imagine him doing that. Afterward, I contacted the tour company to cancel our reservations. Since it was a same-day cancellation, we were charged 100% of the cancellation fee. I billed Brian for the entire fee since he was the one who ruined our honeymoon. It was the natural outcome. Later, Brian blamed me for the failed marriage and spread rumors about it to those around us. However, it seemed that no one sympathized with him among our relatives and co-workers. Instead, he started to be seen as an unconventional mama's boy due to his past actions and was disliked by many. When I told my parents about the divorce, they were initially surprised, but quickly accepted it.
Marriage isn't the only source of happiness. As long as you're happy, Emma, that's what matters.
I couldn't be more grateful for my mother's words. As a side note, since then, my hobby has become traveling. I felt it would be a waste to let long vacations go to waste, so I embarked on my first solo trip. Going overseas was a bit difficult, but I enjoyed a relaxing time in historic cities I had always wanted to visit. Being alone is actually quite enjoyable. Thanks to that historical adventure trip, I've started to fully enjoy solo traveling whenever I have time off. On my next break, I'm planning to embark on my next overseas trip. I've begun a life where I won't let myself be controlled by marriage alone. Wow, being alone is actually quite enjoyable. Thanks to that historical adventure trip, I've started to fully enjoy solo traveling whenever I have time off. On my next break, I'm planning to embark on my next overseas trip. I've begun a life where I won't let myself be controlled by marriage alone. Mommy, I heard my daughter's voice, filled with surprise and panic. In response, I desperately tried to hang on to my fading consciousness, but all my efforts were futile, and I fainted right in front of my daughter. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed after having been rushed to the ER. My daughter was there, clutching my hand tightly, refusing to let go. I must have given her quite a scare. I was filled with guilt, about to apologize when she spoke before I could.
Mommy, the baby in your tummy says they don't want to get erased by Daddy.
I held my breath in surprise. My name is Linda Williams. I'm a 27-year-old homemaker, living with my husband Mark, who is 2 years my senior, and my 4-year-old daughter Sarah. I used to work as a sports trainer until recently when I had to quit. The reason? I'm expecting our second child. I really didn't want to quit, but after my pregnancy was discovered, I started feeling unwell more often and had no choice but to leave. I was depressed after quitting a job I loved, but there were also good aspects. Up until then, Mark wasn't very helpful with housework or child raising, but he started taking the initiative for my sake. I'm worried about my health, but I'm glad that Mark is changing. At that time, I thought everything would be okay.
Mommy, wake up. It's morning.
When I woke up to Sarah's innocent voice, it was 7 a.m. The school bus for Sarah's daycare arrives at 7:30 a.m. I jumped up in a hurry.
Shoot, Sarah, we need to get ready quickly.
What's wrong?
We overslept. If we don't hurry, the bus will be here.
While brushing my confused Sarah and leaving the room, I realized that I hadn't seen Mark anywhere. He usually leaves around 7:15 a.m., so he should still be at home. Maybe he's downstairs. Maybe he's having breakfast. Although a little annoyed that he didn't check on us, I headed for the stairs. That's when it happened. I slipped, and I felt a momentary sensation of being thrown into the air. I'm gonna fall. Instinctively reaching out for the handrail, I managed to grab onto it and prevent myself from tumbling down the stairs.
Oh, that was close.
I put my hand on my stomach immediately, but I did hit it, and it does hurt. Just as I breathed a sigh of relief, Sarah, looking pale, rushed over.
Mommy, are you okay?
I'm fine, honey. Sorry for scaring you.
Regaining my footing, I embraced Sarah. Then Mark, who must have noticed the commotion, rushed over from downstairs.
What happened?
I slipped and almost fell down the stairs.
Whoa, be careful.
I'm sorry, but it was like the floor was slippery.
What?
And the floor seems to be cleaner than usual.
I had noticed until now, but the wooden floor in the hallway was sparkling, as if someone had polished it. Then Mark said in a flustered manner,
Oh right, I waxed the floor last night.
Wax? Why would you do that all of a sudden?
I noticed it while cleaning the floor, but I guess I got a little too excited. I'm sorry.
Oh, I see.
I was surprised by the idea of him waxing the floor, which was something he had never done before. But he had been doing a lot of housework recently, so perhaps he had started noticing the little things. Once men start paying attention to details, they just can't stop, can they? Even though I found it a bit strange, I decided not to worry about it. A few days later on a Sunday, Mark had to go to holiday work, so I decided to take Sarah to the park, just the two of us. Before, I would run around and play with Sarah, but I can't do that now. I watched Sarah playing on the swing, a water bottle Mark had prepared for me in hand. Who would have thought that Mark would start preparing things like a water bottle for me? When Sarah was first born, Mark was so uninterested in anything to do with the house. It still brings tears to my eyes when I think about it. He also had no interest in Sarah. So every time I say something to him, he gets grumpy, and coming home from work became later and later. The fact that he now prepares a bottle of water for me is still a shock, but I can't hide how happy it makes me. Thinking about this and feeling a bit thirsty, I decided to take a sip of the tea Mark had prepared for me.
Huh?
Mommy?
After drinking about a quarter of the bottle, I suddenly felt dizzy and began to feel unstable on my feet. I grabbed onto the fence of the swing for support, but even then, I could feel my strength fading, and it became increasingly difficult to stand.
Mommy, what's wrong? Mommy.
Hearing Sarah's worried voice, my fading consciousness. Hearing Sarah's surprised and worried voice, I desperately tried to hold on to my fading consciousness.
If I faint here, I'll leave Sarah alone.
But even with this thought, I fell right there while protecting my stomach. When I came to, the first thing that hit my eyes was a stark white ceiling. For a moment, I didn't understand where I was. But then I noticed the smell of disinfectant and the figure of a nurse appearing saying, "Are you all right?" I realized then that I was in a hospital. At the same time, I thought of Sarah.
Excuse me, Sarah, do you know where my daughter is? She should have been with me when I fainted.
As I sat up and asked the nurse, she said, "Ah," and seemed to understand immediately. Maybe trying to reassure me, she smiled at me.
She came to the hospital in the ambulance with you. She should be with your husband now. He left work early to come here. He arrived a little while ago. He's such a caring husband.
The nurse said that she would go and call them and then left the room. Feeling relieved that Sarah was not alone, my head started to spin again and I collapsed on the bed. Why? When there was no issue during my previous prenatal checkups, was it because I moved around too much or did I eat something bad? As these thoughts spun around in my head, I suddenly remembered the tea from the water bottle that I had drank just before I fainted. Come to think of it, that tea... Just as I thought about this, the door opened and the nurse, a Dr. Mark, and Sarah came in.
Mommy?
Sarah, I'm sorry for leaving you alone.
I'm okay. But what about Mommy? Are you okay, Mommy?
Yeah, I'm alright now.
As I patted the head of Sarah, who had rushed over to me, the doctor smiled next to me. In the end, it was decided that I would be hospitalized for 2 or 3 days. After a thorough examination by the doctor and the nurse, they left the room.
I'll go buy a drink, and he also left.
In the hospital room, it was just me and Sarah. Then, Sarah seemed a bit restless and looked like she wanted to say something.
What's up, Sarah?
Mommy, can you keep a secret from Daddy?
Huh? Okay, but why?
Although I was wondering why, I nodded in agreement, and Sarah brought her face closer to me with a serious look.
The baby is saying that they don't want to get erased by Daddy.
I was momentarily speechless, unable to understand what Sarah was saying. Sarah then pursed her lips in dissatisfaction and spoke a little louder.
The baby is saying Daddy's being mean, and the tea in the water bottle.
At these words, I was taken aback. I too had sensed an unusual bitterness in the tea from the water bottle. At the time of drinking, I thought maybe Mark had bought a different type of tea than usual, and didn't give it much thought. But, thinking about it now, I was hit by a terrible dizziness just after drinking that tea. I had a slight feeling somewhere in my heart that there might be some relation to the fainting incident. But what does it mean by the baby saying, "Hey, Sarah"?
I'm sorry I'm late. The cafeteria was crowded.
Just as I was about to ask Sarah properly, Mark came back into the room. I swallowed my words in surprise, and Sarah seemed uncomfortable and buried her face in the bed.
Something happened?
No, it's nothing.
Well, whatever. I'm going home for today. I have to work tomorrow. Just rest up, okay?
Mark took Sarah's hand and left, but my daughter showed a momentary reluctance to leave.
Let's go home with Daddy today. Mommy is staying at the hospital.
Ah, okay.
I couldn't help but feel uneasy about my daughter, who followed him without saying anything. I wonder if Sarah is okay. I was worried, but there was nothing I could do at the moment. I just had to make sure I could be discharged as soon as possible and crawled into bed. But I couldn't fall asleep easily as Sarah's puzzling words kept coming to my mind. 3 days later, I was allowed to discharge. As my husband was working, my friend Kimberly came to pick me up. Kimberly was a friend from the same gym I worked at. She has been looking after me since I quit due to my health condition. I was shocked to hear you had fainted, but you seem to be doing much better than I thought.
I've been sleeping so well in the hospital that I feel much better. I'm glad. I was worried because you're pregnant.
While having such a conversation in the car heading home, I felt a bit uneasy inside. I had been constantly feeling sluggish and heavy-headed, but the discomfort improved in just a few days. The only unusual things I had done during that time were taking a break from housework and childcare and eating a balanced diet in the hospital. Upon thinking that, I suddenly realized something. So that means I didn't eat Mark's cooking yesterday. I remembered there had been several oddities since Mark started doing housework. Aside from almost slipping on the wax, there were other things that bothered me. For instance, things were placed in spots where they usually aren't, causing me to trip. Or the time I was told the shower was ready, but it turned out that the hot water tank was empty, and cold water came out. Such incidents occurred frequently, especially when cold water came out. I rushed to the hospital out of concern for the baby in my belly, as it was in the winter. Fortunately, there were no problems, but it was a really nerve-wracking event. Of course, I thought these were just mistakes due to Mark's inexperience with housework. However, reconsidering now, each of them seemed to be something that could lead to irreversible consequences if one step was wrong.
Linda, we're here.
Oh yeah.
Before I knew it, we had arrived at the house. Seeing my silence, she looked at me with worry.
If you're feeling sick, you should say so, okay?
Yeah, I will.
Well, you should rest for today at least. I'll pick up Sarah, okay?
Thank you. I appreciate it.
As we got out of the car together, I thought to myself that I should talk to Sarah properly once she's back. In the evening, Sarah returned home with Kimberly. She even bought some deli food for dinner and said, "Call me if anything happens before leaving." She was like a superhero. I silently jumped for joy in my mind. Having dinner with the deli food that Kimberly bought, I felt unusually well. So I decided to talk to Sarah again. "Can we talk a bit more about the other day?" I asked, and Sarah nodded seriously.
Can you talk to the baby in my belly, Sarah?
Yes.
Sarah nodded firmly. It was hard to believe, but I felt that there was no falsehood in her words.
Then can you tell me again what the baby is saying?
Well, the baby is scared of Daddy.
Why?
Daddy is trying to hurt us on purpose and separate Mommy and the baby. So the baby is clinging to Mommy with all his might.
I was at a loss for words at this revelation.
Mommy, what's wrong? Are you in pain?
Sarah, I'm sorry, I'm okay.
Seeing Sarah's tearful face, I hastily embraced my little girl. And I made a decision in secret. I have to find solid evidence or no one will believe this. The next day, after watching my husband leave for work, I pulled something out of the back of the closet. It was a baby monitor we used when Sarah was an infant. If this reveals what he's doing... If it showed, the thought was frightening, but if it showed nothing, that would be okay too. With a small hope in my heart, I hid the camera behind a houseplant. Then, a few days later, I mustered up the courage to check it. I can't believe this. It's too awful. What was captured there was something unimaginable, enough to shatter my small hope. And then I made up my mind. I absolutely won't forgive this. A week or so had passed since I saw the footage. I left my daughter Sarah at my parents' home earlier in the day. Then I tidied up the entire house and prepared a perfect dinner before Mark came home.
What's going on? I could have made dinner.
I can't let you do anything dangerous anymore.
Huh? What? What do you mean?
I didn't miss the flash of caution in his eyes.
What have you been feeding your pregnant wife all this time? My health has improved significantly since I stopped eating your cooking for the past week.
I had pretended to eat my husband's cooking and threw them all away. When I told this to my husband, he was slightly shaken.
Also, when I checked around the house, I noticed the non-slip pad under the rug was missing, and the anti-tip device on the bookshelf next to the bed was removed.
I got goosebumps when I found these. These weren't just targeted at our baby. It implied I was also a target. When I glanced at Mark, his mouth was twitching as he tried to force a smile.
Now that I think about it, there was a time when body wash had spilled on the bathroom floor after shower and things fell from shelves. If I'd fallen and hit my stomach, it would have been a disaster.
Those are just coincidences, right? Maybe I just made a little mistake.
I thought so too until I saw this.
I thrust my phone in front of his face, and when I played the footage recorded on the baby monitor, there was Mark talking on the phone with someone. And his voice was clearly recorded. I get it, but it's not going as planned. It's surprisingly hard to make a person disappear in an accident. Well, two people. It would be best if the baby in the belly could disappear too. Those words from the video sent chills down my spine no matter how many times I hear them. Watching Mark, he was shaking minutely and trembling in silence. Despite being wary, I continued to speak.
Once I'm gone, you're talking about doing this and that. Things too disgusting to even mention. The person on the phone is a woman, isn't it? Once I'm gone, you're talking about doing this and that. Things too disgusting to even mention.
That's bullshit. You're spying on me like this? I'll sue you.
How dare you? Do you even understand what you've done?
Just shut up. No longer able to find excuses, Mark. His face bright red, lost control and lashed out at me.
No longer able to find excuses, Mark's face turned bright red as he lost control and lashed out at me. Instinctively, I hunched over to protect my stomach. Just as I did, a loud bang sounded, and the next moment I heard Mark scream.
Linda, are you okay?
Kimberly, thank you.
I looked over with relief to find Kimberly, who easily subdued Mark and was laughing. She's a strong woman who has won the national wrestling tournament multiple times. For the day, I had asked Kimberly to stand by in the next room, just in case. Mark, pinned down by Kimberly, was already reddening his face and bellowing, "You think you're alive because of who? Me, right? Yet, you had annoying demands to play with the kids and help with housework. If you all would just disappear, I could live freely? Just get lost for my sake, you idiot."
So that's what you think. But thank you.
Huh?
Actually, you just helped me a lot by self-destructing.
Saying so, I thrust my phone, which was in call mode, in front of Mark. The call was to 911. Actually, it had been in this state for a little while before, so all of Mark's words had gone straight through to the police.
Please, not the cops.
Mark was struggling to escape, but Kimberly had him firmly pinned down and he couldn't move.
Please, I apologize. Forgive me.
That's not something you can get away with just by apologizing. What you were about to do.
Don't say such things.
While Mark was thrashing around, the sound of several footsteps and a voice saying, "We're coming in," echoed, and the police officers entered through the door that was already unlocked, and in no time, Mark was taken away. Even on his way, Mark was pathetically clinging to me and pleading, "Help me!" A subsequent investigation revealed the plan by Mark and his mistress. Their objective was to eliminate me, who was in their way, so they could be together. Even if they failed to get rid of me, they were contemplating a story that the loss of our child due to my carelessness would lead to divorce. Moreover, if they could blame it on me, they thought they could claim compensation at the time of divorce. The sheer audacity of it all leaves me speechless, but even now when I think about what could have happened if I hadn't noticed anything, it still sends chills down my spine.
Mommy, the baby is happy. She says she can always be by your side.
When I went to pick up Sarah, she said that right away.
Yes, I'm so glad. It's all thanks to you. I thanked my daughter from the bottom of my heart, and tears of relief flowed.
Mommy, why are you crying? The baby is looking forward to meeting you. I'm also looking forward to meeting you.
About a month after Mark's arrest, our divorce was finalized. And a few months later from that, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Sarah is overjoyed at her sister's birth and has now become a very reliable big sister. I'd rather live with Mom than you. It was just after midnight on a Friday night. My husband was playing an online game in the living room while I was doing some work I had brought home at the dining table when he casually suggested we should live separately. We hadn't been getting along well lately, but I still had the right to hear his side of the story. My name is Megan. It was midnight the moment I turned 35, when my husband, who knew I was going through infertility treatments, dropped a bomb. It was such a surprise that I went blank. Without taking his eyes off his game, he said, "You just turned 35, didn't you? Even if you got pregnant now, it would be a high-risk pregnancy, so I'm giving up on having kids with you. That's why I want to live separately and live with my mom." What? I don't understand. I couldn't understand how giving up on having kids had something to do with living separately with me and going to live with my mother-in-law. We got married 2 years ago. I wanted to enjoy our new married life for a while, but my husband was eager to have a child. Being the youngest of 3 brothers, each of whom had 3 kids, my husband was constantly told by his older brothers, "It's best to have kids while you're still young and energetic." So we decided to give it a try and began trying for a baby, but a year passed and we were not blessed with a child. One day my husband said, "You should get checked out." For what? Why we can't have a kid? There must be something wrong with you. He yelled. Although his presumption made me upset, I decided to get checked out at the gynecologist's office just in case. The results showed that I indeed had a problem that made it difficult for me to get pregnant. I had no symptoms, and the results were a huge shock. The gynecologist said, "It's difficult to conceive, but natural pregnancy is still possible." However, I felt heavy-hearted to tell my husband about it. That evening, while we were having dinner, I calmly told my husband about the results. He seemed triumphant as he said, "I knew it was you. But they said I could still get pregnant." I muttered. He glared at me and said, "It has been impossible, and it will stay the same." He made his own conclusion again, and I was filled with anger. "You could have a problem too, you know." That provoked him to raise his voice. "Megan, it's clear what's going on here. How dare you shift the blame onto me?"
"Megan, it's clear what's going on here. How dare you shift the blame onto me?"
With a loud bang, my husband slammed his fists on the table in anger. I shrugged my shoulders with surprise.
"You're nothing but a failure. Can't even bear a child."
With that parting shot, he headed for the bedroom. Left alone, I started crying, cleaning the dishes through my tears. My husband was just shocked and lashing out. If we could just have a child, we could be a happy couple again. I told myself this, and decided to double my efforts in trying to conceive and win my husband's heart back. I started attending the gynecologist regularly. Even though I tried especially hard on my most fertile days, it was always a swing and a miss, and I found myself becoming stubborn about it. One morning I said to my husband, "Let's try again tonight, okay?" To my surprise, he looked at me disapprovingly and said, "Isn't it a little embarrassing talking about tonight first thing in the morning?" I flushed with embarrassment. Thinking about it, I would find it strange too, but we're a couple. It should be natural. Hiding my complex emotions, I tried to gently persuade him. "You want a child too, don't you?" But my husband retorted, "I don't really want a child. It costs a lot of money. My brothers told me that a real man has a wife and kids, so I thought I'd try. But it's not happening because of you. I have a respectable excuse now, so I don't care anymore." From that point on, whenever I approached my husband, he would reject me with excuses like "I'm busy" or "I'm tired." I was just as busy and tired from work. Being rejected time and again shattered my pride as a woman. Lately, my husband has been addicted to online gaming, staying up late into the night. Before I knew it, not just our intimate life, but our daily conversations had become almost non-existent. My husband seemed to have lost interest, not just in having a child, but in me too. But I didn't stop going to the gynecologist. What surprised me during infertility treatments was the sheer number of couples attending. The clinic I went to specialized in infertility treatments. It was always crowded, and it was normal to wait 2 to 3 hours, even with an appointment. Seeing so many other couples struggling with the same issue helped me a lot. Occasionally I would see a couple leave the consultation room, the woman touching her still flat belly tenderly, her husband walking close by her side. Perhaps they just found out they were pregnant. I wish it was me. I want a child too. I want to win back my husband's love and be happy. I had held a faint hope for my child, but now I was told it would be difficult to pursue any further treatment without my husband getting tested. And I found myself at a standstill. It might be impossible after all. The way home from the gynecology clinic always filled me with a painful longing, making me want to cry. Getting out to the main road, I looked up and was taken aback by the sight of an old lady in garish attire. The surprise made my tears stop. She was probably in her 70s. Her thick makeup and brightly colored dress were jarringly loud. I didn't know anyone like this, but strangely, she looked familiar. Could it be my mother-in-law? Even though we lived in the same city, I rarely saw her, and she looked nothing like the image I remembered. But I was certain. There was a distinctive mole on her cheek, but my mother-in-law was supposed to be a simple, ordinarily dressed old lady. And, taken aback by her drastic makeover, I blended into the crowd. In truth, my mother-in-law is quite the character. She's lenient on herself, yet overly strict with others, casually hurling insults that would leave most people speechless. Moreover, she dotes on my husband, her youngest child, displaying blatant favoritism and treating the rest of her children as if they're good for nothing but money. My brother-in-law also despises her for this. When my father-in-law passed away from cancer last year, there was talk of her moving in with one of her children, but both the eldest and the second son and their families adamantly refused. I thought it would fall to us, but she declared she would live alone as long as she was healthy. Whether out of resentment for being turned down or just her inherent character, when my father-in-law passed away, she caused a huge scene, shouting, "Ungrateful brats," stealing money from the elderly, and monopolized his inheritance without dividing it. No matter how many times my husband or brother-in-law suggested dividing the inheritance according to the law, she would not relent, and no one could defeat her. Even I'd been told by her, "I have no intention of getting along with you, so don't come to my house." But compared to the fiery battles between her and my brother-in-law and their wives, I was in a relatively peaceful position. My mother-in-law disappeared into a shop without noticing me. I couldn't believe she was the same woman I knew, and I found myself staring at the signboard of the building she entered. That night, I didn't know whether or not I should tell my husband about his mother, but decided not to. After all, she's an adult, and with my father-in-law gone, she's single. It's not my place to criticize her personal hobbies. I've seen her a few times since then, but I've always pretended not to. Then months passed, and as the calendar turned to my birthday, my husband proposed that we live separately. I decided to ask my husband, "Did you find someone you like?" Perhaps my mother-in-law's drastic makeover was an excuse, and he might be planning to remarry someone. But he spends his days playing video games at home, so I don't think he's seeing anyone, I ponder in my mind. I find myself oddly calm and almost want to laugh. My husband, on his part, responds seriously. "Well, there's a girl in my gaming group who I kinda like, but it's just the internet after all." Could be a guy pretending to be a woman, which makes it all more ridiculous. He suddenly suggests a separation. He is sane enough to judge, so why did he suddenly suggest a separation? I just don't get it. My husband continues, "I just want to live with my mom more than with you." He repeats, why would he want to live with his mother and not with me?
Do you hate me? Has our love disappeared?
I search for an answer that would satisfy me, and ask my husband the next question. As soon as the words leave my mouth, my heart throbs in pain. He doesn't need me, the woman who can't bear a child due to infertility. Holding back the tears, I wait for my husband's reply.
No, not really.
But?
My husband defies my anticipation in a straightforward manner.
Didn't I tell you before? I don't care about having children anymore. We need another way to make money.
Money?
His unexpected words. He nods calmly and says with a serious face, "It's my mom's inheritance." I can't see the connection in the story at all, and I'm confused.
My brothers are greedy. They'll try to take more of Mom's inheritance than me, using the excuse that they have more children. I won't let that happen.
Who's the greedy one here? I was dumbfounded, but I kept my mouth shut.
But your mom is very healthy. Isn't it too early to talk about your inheritance?
That's why. My mom hates you, but she adores me. If I start living with her from now, I think it will be advantageous in receiving the inheritance. My mom must have a lot of my dad's inheritance that she took all for herself, so I don't have to work hard and can live a comfortable life. We don't have children. We need money because there's no one to take care of us after getting old.
My husband explained as if making a mockery, but I understood the meaning and was taken aback. The reason my husband wanted a child was...
So you needed a child to take care of you after getting old? And since that's not possible, you want a larger share of your mom's inheritance?
With hopes my assumptions would prove wrong, I confronted my husband. However, his response was again completely opposite to what I had wished for. Of course, he exclaimed, "Kids are there to take care of their parents. If I live with Mom now, I might be able to take all of the inheritance." I couldn't help but feel the strong blood connection between Tom and his mother, as if it explained everything. He showed no intention to share anything he could, to share anything equally. While I was left speechless, Tom continued his monologue.
When Mom's gone, I'll come back to live with you. You can't bear children, but you can manage the house chores just fine. You serve a purpose as a housekeeper, and you bring home a decent paycheck as a full-time worker.
All right, let's get a divorce.
My true feelings burst out, cutting him off. Who would accept such treatment, agree to live separately, and then move back together? He's making a fool out of me. I knew that Tom, being the youngest of three, had a tendency to be spoiled, but this selfish plan of his was beyond reprehensible and unacceptable. I realized I could never find happiness staying with him any longer. That was the moment all my love for Tom completely vanished.
Let's hire a lawyer to properly divide our assets and part ways.
Divorce? I didn't say anything about divorce. We can just live separately. And hiring a lawyer sounds overly dramatic.
Though Tom seemed startled at first, my explanations seemed to sway him.
No, you'd feel better as a single too. I won't be satisfied unless we legally divide everything equally. If we get a third party involved to distribute the assets, there'll be no further issues, right?
With a smug grin, Tom agreed.
Well, you have a point. Fine. If I get a good chunk of Mom's inheritance, my life after the retirement is secure, and I can even remarry someone else. Just don't regret it.
Likewise, don't count your chickens before they're hatched, and make sure you don't regret it.
The next day, I got a recommendation for a lawyer from a friend who had gone through a divorce, and went straight to consult them. I also contacted our landlord to inform them that only Tom would be moving out. I arranged for the movers too. While I was making calls, I could hear Tom on the phone with his mom telling her how he wanted to live together and be a dutiful son. I was secretly shocked he had proposed separation to me without first getting his mother's approval. According to Tom, his mother was overjoyed at the prospect of living with him. She seemed to have some requests or something to ask of him. Just like that, preparations for the divorce proceeded astonishingly quickly. Initially, the plan was to split the assets 50-50, but the lawyer I hired was incredibly competent. He methodically cornered Tom into agreeing to also add alimony, allowing me to take 70% of the assets. If we're separating due to Tom's selfish reasons, I have no qualms about taking it without hesitation. 3 days after our divorce was finalized, and my husband returned to his parents' home, I was relaxing in my apartment when my phone rang. The moment I picked up, he pleaded, "Help me, marry me again." He sobbed.
There was no inheritance at all. My mom has been blowing all her money on male strippers. She's penniless now. What's worse, she's drowning in senior citizen loans and has mortgaged her house.
Oh, really? That's tough. Your mother is addicted to those strip clubs, isn't she?
I chuckled. I've seen my former mother-in-law disappearing into those strip clubs. The prices on their billboards were shockingly high. I've seen her go in several times, but there's no doubt she spent a fortune there. Ever since Tom got hooked on online games and stopped showing up at his parents' house, his mother got sucked into this club scene. She spent all of her late husband's inheritance and her retirement savings, and now she's taken out so many loans she can't make ends meet.
Why didn't you tell me if you knew?
I told him, I don't intend to meddle in people's hobbies. I never stopped you from playing video games, did I?
She asked me to take out loans in my name, but that's impossible. Give me the money from the divorce settlement. If we remarry, it'll be our money.
No.
Why not?
You love me, don't you? I did love you when we were married, but when you suggested we separate, all my feelings for you disappeared. It's obvious you're only after my money now. Why would I get back together with you?
That's not fair. Mom's demanding my entire paycheck. She says it's only natural for a child to support their parents.
Tom whimpered pitifully, but his belief that he should always be in the center of attention and that everyone else should cater to him was the same as his mother's. They really are two peas in a pod. They brought this on themselves, and I don't owe them any help.
We're divorced now, Tom. We're strangers. Please handle your family's problems on your own.
I said, smiling brightly. I ended the call and blocked his number. I called each of my former brother-in-laws. It had only been 3 days since the divorce, and I'd planned to let them know when things calmed down, but it seemed better to tell them sooner rather than later. I relayed everything Tom had told me about his mother and the circumstances surrounding our divorce. My former brother-in-laws sympathized with me and promised to give Tom a piece of their mind. Later, I heard from one of them that Tom's brothers had stormed his parents' house, causing a huge commotion. I heard it briefly from my former brother-in-law. After Tom's call, I changed the locks on my door just in case, but I decided to move after all. It's better to completely cut ties. While I was looking at various real estate listings, I found out that his parents' house was for sale. I could ask my former brother-in-laws what happened to Tom and his mother, but I decided not to concern myself with it. I'll look forward and sever ties with the past. I'm thinking of moving to a pet-friendly apartment. and enjoying a leisurely, free life. Perhaps with a cute cat. But I had to toss him out. My husband, who can be misogynistic, always seems to look down on me as a stay-at-home wife. He would threaten me with divorce the moment I try to speak up for myself.
Try me and we're getting a divorce, he'd say.
One day I found out about his little secret. From that moment on, I lost all the respect I had for him, and I decided to change. I am no longer the submissive wife that he can look down on. With the divorce paper he prepared in my hands, I began my plan to get back at him. My name is Megan. I lost my father when I was in high school, and since then, it's been just me and my mother. Thanks to the money my father left us, I was able to attend an IT vocational school, and somehow managed to enter the workforce. Finally, I can pay back my mother. Just when I was beginning to stand on my own feet, my mother passed away from a fatal heart attack. Left all alone in the world, my savior appeared, who is my current husband, Scott. After I started working at my current company, Scott took it upon himself to guide me, a novice in the corporate world.
He was there for me when my mother died, voicing his concern for my mental health, urging me to rely on him more.
From that point on, I turned to Scott, not just for work-related advice, but for personal matters as well. Scott always seemed to be there, leading the way for me.
Megan, you really can't live without me, can you?
He would say that frequently after we officially started dating.
And then he proposed, "From now on, I'll protect you for the rest of our lives. Let's get married."
At Scott's suggestion, I quit my job after getting married to become a full-time housewife, maintaining a sweet home so my husband can go to work without worry. This became my new job. However, living up to Scott's high standards was tough, and I struggled to keep up with his expectations and household chores.
Hey Megan, what were you doing all day?
My husband would question, to which I would reply meekly. I cleaned the room, did the laundry, aired out the comforter, and then I went shopping for dinner. I spent some time making beef stew. How's the taste?
It's okay, but did you really clean?
Why?
There's dust on this shelf.
Oh, I must have missed the spot. I'll be more careful next time.
If you're home all day, at least make sure the housework is done right.
I'm sorry. Scott maintained a superior-inferior dynamic just like after our marriage. Scott maintained a superior-inferior dynamic just like at work, even after our marriage. At one point he criticized,
Hey, what's up with this meat and potato stew?
Huh, is it bad?
Why is there pork in a meat and potato stew? It's supposed to be beef.
We always made it with pork in my family. That's because your family was poor and could only afford pork, right?
Are you saying my salary is not enough?
That's not what I meant.
Scott would severely scold me if anything didn't go his way, and often belittled me for being a child from a single-parent family without common sense. He started spending his weekends out alone.
Hey Scott, where do you go every weekend?
One day when I asked him this, Scott's mood quickly soured.
Why do I need to report my whereabouts to you?
It's not a report. I just wish we could spend more time together as a couple on weekends.
You have all day, every day to rest at home while I work tirelessly. Let me spend my days off the way I want.
I'm not asking you to take me anywhere. I just want us to spend some quiet time together.
That's exactly what I can't stand. I married a woman with no special talents and even let her be a housewife. All you need to do is keep quiet and do housework for me. Scott mumbled and stormed off to the bedroom.
The next day, he handed me a piece of paper. It was a divorce notice, with Scott's name already filled in.
What does this mean?
In shock, I quickly questioned him.
You don't even understand what this is? Guess single mothers don't even teach their kids some basics, huh?
Scott, do you want to divorce me?
This is a warning. It's because of that insolent thing you said yesterday. If you dare to express your opinion to me like that again, I will divorce you right away.
But why?
When he said that, I found myself unable to respond. After all, I have nowhere else to go, as I have no family to fall back on. Since then, every weekend when Scott would leave, I had no choice but to quietly see him off. One day, as I was cleaning the house as usual, I noticed that his computer was still turned on. When I looked at the screen to turn it off, a homepage of a hotel resort caught my eye. Could this possibly be a couple's trip? My mood brightened all at once. Despite all his harsh words, Scott cared about me. From that day, I put more effort into housework than usual, waiting for Scott to bring up the topic of the trip. However, no matter how long I waited, he would not mention anything about the trip. Out of curiosity, I began to check the home computer more frequently. Looking at the browsing history, it seems like Scott was still searching for hotels. I wondered if he was seriously selecting an accommodation for us. One day, while periodically checking the computer, I noticed a completed reservation notification on a booking site. The reservation was for this upcoming weekend. Finally, he must have finished selecting a hotel for us. While anxiously waiting for Scott to invite me, it was already Friday. Unable to hold back, I asked Scott, don't you have something to tell me?
Scott, don't you have something to tell me?
Scott looked at me slightly startled.
What are you talking about?
But I couldn't insist on him to talk about the trip. He became grumpy and went to sleep, and just like that, Saturday dawned.
Good morning, Scott.
What's with you? Dressed up this early in the morning?
Because...
Never mind. I'll be leaving once I'm ready. I won't be home today.
With that, he quickly got ready and left the house. What was happening? Did he change the reservation after that? The name written in the companion section was not mine, but another woman's name.
Companion Lily, 25 years old?
At that moment, I understood everything. What he had been planning all along was not a trip with me, but a trip with a young mistress named Lily. In that moment, all my feelings of love, gratitude, and respect for Scott swiftly faded. I was quick to react. To confirm his affair, I headed to the hotel that Scott had booked. Upon arrival, I made sure to imprint in my mind the sight of my husband and the young woman cheerfully entering the hotel. Of course, I didn't forget to take photos for evidence. When I returned home, I thoroughly checked our computer. It took some time, but I was able to find texts exchanged between Scott and Lily, as well as photos of them together. Now I can confront him. Just you wait. There was still plenty of time until he returned from his trip. I left the house and spent the day aimlessly until the evening, then savored my time alone in my empty house. I may have been scolded by Scott for lazing around, but now those days of tension seemed unreal. I even abandoned housework the next day, ordered delivery, and spent my time however I liked. On Sunday night, Scott finally came home.
Welcome home. You're late, aren't you?
Scott's eyes widened at the sight of me lounging on the sofa.
Hey, what's going on?
What do you mean, what's going on?
Why are you still sitting on the sofa when I, your husband, have returned home? You're not even greeting me at the door. That's not right.
Noticing the delivery bag on the table, Scott's anger started to seep in.
Hey, what is this? Look at you living a high life while I'm not here.
I sighed at him and said,
And where were you staying this weekend, Scott? Weren't you enjoying yourself?
If you knew, you wouldn't behave like this. Sounds like you want to see that again.
Scott said, rifling through a drawer.
What? It's not here.
Scott flew at me, spitting angrily.
Where did you hide the divorce papers?
They're not here anymore.
What?
Scott almost exploded at my response, but the next moment he started laughing sarcastically.
So that's how it is. I see. You threw away the divorce papers because you don't want to divorce me, thinking I wouldn't leave you, huh? You really are senseless. I feel bad. Your only mother couldn't even raise a kid, right?
I really don't understand what you're saying.
So you want to play dumb, huh? Too bad. I can get as many divorce papers as I want from the city hall. I'll go get them right now.
I didn't say I threw them away.
Then why aren't they here?
They're not here because I've already submitted them.
What?
Didn't you hear me? I signed those divorce papers and submitted them to the city hall yesterday.
Wait, you submitted the divorce papers? Do you even understand what that means?
Of course, isn't it obvious? If you submit divorce papers, the divorce is finalized. Are you telling me you didn't know that, Scott?
Scott's face turned beet red at my mockery. Don't mess with me. You lived a comfortable life with my salary.
Comfortable? Who's saying that? I couldn't help but retort.
Where is the comfort in a marriage with someone who constantly belittles and ridicules me? Someone who never shows gratitude no matter how much housework I do?
Belittle you? Of course, a housewife like you is obviously below me, the breadwinner. If you want to give me an attitude like that, I'm done. Be all alone and realize your own foolishness. Get out right now.
Scott kicked me out, yelling and ranting. Expecting this, I had already packed my bags. It was a good decision. I picked up my suitcase and proudly left the house. On a whim, I rented a weekly apartment and spent the night there. The next morning, I looked at my phone and saw an overwhelming number of missed calls from Scott. Just then, he called me again.
Oh, what's up?
Don't what's up me. Where are you now?
It's none of your business. We're not married anymore.
Stop messing around. The divorce papers you submitted on your own are invalid.
Didn't you sign them yourself?
I wasn't serious. You probably did it out of confusion too, right? After a night's rest, you should be cool-headed now. If you apologize, I'll forgive you. So come back.
I haven't done anything I should apologize for.
How dare you test me, your husband, while I provided for you this whole time? If I dump you, you'll be alone again. Is that what you want?
I realized something. It's better to be alone than to be with someone who doesn't care about me.
I could tell that Scott was shaking with anger on the other end of the phone. He raised his voice through the phone.
What? I've even compromised. Fine, I don't care about you anymore. You'll regret this.
I'm pretty sure you'll be the one to regret this.
You can't do anything. You're just a loser.
Scott hung up the phone in a fit of rage. I used to be so scared of his yelling, but now all I feel is contempt. He did contact me for several days, but a week later, I got a call on my cell phone from him.
Megan, what the hell is this bill?
Once I had confirmed Scott's affair, I had asked a lawyer to file for damages. It seems that he finally received the bill.
Oh, did it arrive? It's written clearly on the bill.
Why do I have to pay damages? You're the one who left. I even said I was willing to start over. But you're the one who refused to come back because you're so stubborn.
Aren't you misunderstanding something? It's damages for your affair.
Affair? When and with whom did I have an affair?
With Lily, 25 years old? You've been seeing her for a year now.
How did you...
You left so much evidence on your computer. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? You really thought I was a fool, huh?
Scott seemed to think I was bluffing. He retorted in a fury.
Evidence? You're lying. There was no such thing on the computer.
Yes, that's right. You're not so stupid as to leave texts and photos with your mistress on there.
Humph, as I knew you were bluffing. You can't fool me, as I knew you were bluffing. Humph, you can't fool me.
Why don't you see for yourself whether I'm bluffing or not?
I sent Scott the evidence of his affair. Upon seeing it, his tone of voice suddenly became frantic.
How did you get this?
Indeed, all the data had been deleted from the computer, but Scott completely forgot that I had graduated from a vocational school with a certification in IT. It took some time, but I was able to restore the deleted data, so I saved them. Realizing he couldn't wriggle out, Scott suddenly changed his attitude.
Look, Megan, you don't really want to do this, do you? Yes, I cheated on you with her, but it was just a fling. You're the only one I truly love. You the only one I truly love, Megan.
I realized that it was all just in my head. Being with you, I was losing confidence in myself. Far from being protected, you were tearing my self-esteem to shreds.
You just have a victim complex. In reality, if it weren't for my salary, you couldn't live, could you? Of course, you'll receive some harsh words at times.
I can't stand the thought of you, who betrayed me, living your best life. I'll make you take responsibility for what you've done. That's what the charges are for. He finally sensed that I was determined and switched back to being verbally abusive.
Fine, I'll pay. I didn't know you were such a nasty woman. I felt sorry for you being alone, so I got together with you. But it was a big mistake.
Right back at you. You chose me because you thought you could control me, right? It was a big mistake that I didn't see it through at the beginning. You're probably with your mistress Lily because she's young and does what you want, right? Pay the damages quickly and go get with her.
Ah, you'll realize soon enough. You're destined for a lonely life. Although putting up a big front, transferred the agreed upon amount of compensation to me as required by my lawyer. However, a few days later he contacted me again. Megan, can you return some of the money to me?
What? I couldn't help but raise my voice. I've never heard of returning a compensation fee. Besides, even after paying the compensation and dividing our property, you should still have plenty of savings left, right?
Well, that's the thing. My savings are running low. That's why I've swallowed my pride to ask.
It seems that Scott, who had invited Lily to live with him, had given her his credit card for emergencies, but she started splurging on his card. Now that Lily had nearly depleted all of his savings with her spending, he was desperate enough to turn to me for help. Exasperated, I told him, I may have been stupid to not see through you and marry you, but you're equally foolish for not noticing your mistress's splurging habit until after you gave her your card.
I realize now that you're the only one for me, Megan. You must feel lonely being single too, right?
Gosh, will you grow up? Do you think I'm gonna be single forever?
No, don't tell me. You found someone else?
No, and can you not compare yourself to others?
Well then, what is it? You don't have a family anymore, right?
With the money left by my parents, I've started a new business. Now I'm blessed with great colleagues, and I hardly have time to feel lonely.
You, with no special talents, starting a business? Are you still saying that? Can't you admit it already? Your words are ruining the people around you.
Me? Ruining? You look down on others until they lose confidence, and spoil your mistress until she gets carried away. Unless you change your selfish behavior, neither you nor anyone around you will ever find happiness.
With that, I firmly rejected Scott. After that, he never contacted me again. He probably realized he could no longer look down on me now that I was successfully running my own business. Rumor has it that Lily dumped Scott right after using up all of his savings. Scott, who could only see his partners as less than him or spoil them without being able to build a solid relationship, will likely have a hard time finding a lifelong companion. If anyone is destined for a lonely life, it's Scott, not me. With that thought in mind, I devoted myself to my work once again today.